Welcome to Nevada Newsmakers. On the broadcast today, Ray Hager, Amy Tarkanian, and I speak with Victoria Seaman, the Assemblywoman, plus on the Power Pundit panel, Ty Cobb, Mary Lau, and Chip Evans. It's all coming up next on an all-new Nevada Newsmakers.
Nevada Newsmakers is brought to you in part by the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, Pro Group Management, and the Retail Association of Nevada. Closed captioning of Nevada Newsmakers is brought to you by the Nevada Trucking Association. Trucking moves America forward. This is Nevada Newsmakers with host Sam Shad, a no-holds-barred political forum. Now, from the Nevada Newsmakers broadcast headquarters, here is Sam Shad.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we're coming to you from James Settlemeyer's ranch, just up the street from the Corley Ranch. And we're here with Victoria Seaman. She represents Assembly District 34, at least for the time being. Pleasure to have you on the program.
Thank you for having me.
I wanted to ask you about the education vouchers and the tumult that has been caused by this 100-day period where kids who are in private schools or religious schools will have to enroll in the school district. And there is just so much confusion going on with this. What's been the response to you?
Yes, I've had a lot of calls and texts and emails from constituents who are concerned about it. I've met with the treasurer's office. They're dealing with the problem. There also may be an online class that children who are in private school can take in the public school. I know that they need to go to the public schools to create their public ID. So I believe the treasurer's office is doing a great job in working on this situation.
And you believe that they'll be able to resolve some of these issues?
Absolutely.
Without the help of the legislature?
Well, we may have to go back into session. When we go back into session, we may have to work on this issue. But for the time being, I'm confident that the treasurer's office is working on this situation.
Now, do you think maybe a special session? Because,
No.
I mean, waiting 2 years would be a long time.
Right. I don't think there'll be a special session for this, but I know that with any and all legislation, there's always some tweaking that needs to be done. I know that when I asked the treasurer's office about this situation, apparently they hadn't budgeted in private school kids going back into public school and going back into private school when this bill was created.
What's going to be the effect, for example, on the Clark County School District?
As far as
the number of kids that will be coming into the system and then 100 days later be leaving.
Right. This is something that I believe the treasurer's office is working on, and I'm confident that they'll work with the county school district and find some good solutions.
Do you have any idea why and how they came up with 100 days? Because for someone like myself, who is a mother of 4, now in private school, but they were in public school, when they were tested to go into private school, we found out that they were 2 years behind. So my twins, who were in 4th grade at the time, had to catch up by doing 2nd grade work just so that way they could be competitive with their 4th grade peers. That's unexcusable to me.
Absolutely.
So for someone like myself, who has to pinch every penny to make sure that my kids get a great education, for this bill to come up, but with the unfairness of the 100 days, that just floors me. How did they come up with 100 days?
You know, that's a good question. And when I went to the treasurer's office to ask about why this was created in the way it was, again, it was budgeting is what was told to me. And I believe that the treasurer's office is going to find a solution for this. And you mentioned your kids were 2 years behind, which is why it's so important that we did this school choice, the education savings account. I think it's a great program. There are some problems with it, as you mentioned, and they are working on these problems, but this is why I think the education savings accounts were an important legislation.
Victoria, I wanted to change the subject with you, if I could. Now, you're going to be running for the state Senate in a district that Republican Mark Lipparelli now holds. Now, you won the 2014 Assembly election in District 34 after your Democratic opponent was disqualified on a residency case. And Democrats have a 12 percentage point advantage over Republicans when it comes to voter registration in your Assembly district. And I was just wondering, is one of the reasons why you're running for the state Senate is because you may not be able to get reelected in your Assembly district simply because of the voter registration?
Well, first of all, I do want to say that I did not win the election because my opponent was disqualified, because in the state of Nevada, you can be a disqualified candidate and still be seated. So that's a misnomer. I won the election straight out. I won it by votes. Had I not won it and worked so hard to win it, I now could, she would have been seated. My opponent would have been seated, even though a district court judge disqualified her.
Right.
So No, I'm running for state senate because I believe that as the only elected in that district, Senate District 6 and 37 and 34 encompass Senate 6. I am the only elected. I'm very engaged with the constituents. My opponent, Senator Liparelli, was not elected. To me, it's an open seat, and he actually voted for both tax hikes. And I don't see how he was engaged with the constituents who voted down the margins tax, which is a little bit different margins tax, by 78%. So this is the reason that I decided to run in Senate District 6.
Okay, so it had to do with the $1.4 billion tax plan that was passed.
That was part of it. The other part, as I stated, was that to me it's an open seat because Senator Liparelli was not elected, and Assemblyman Trowbridge, who encompasses the other part of Senate 6, was also appointed. So I am actually the only elected in Senate District 6.
Okay, just to let the viewers and listeners know, Liparelli was appointed to that seat because it was Mark Hutchison's seat before that.
Correct.
But he was elected lieutenant governor, so Liparelli was appointed to that seat.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
All right, let's take a break. We'll have more with Victoria Seaman when we come back.
To contact Nevada Newsmakers, call 775-857-2244 or go to NevadaNewsmakers.com. Closed captioning of Nevada Newsmakers is brought to you by the Nevada Trucking Association. Trucking moves America forward. And now, back to Nevada Newsmakers with Sam Shad.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we continue our conversation with Victoria Seaman.
All right, Victoria, another reason why you're running for state senate, I'm pretty sure, also has to do with a bill that you brought forward in the last legislative session, which was Assembly Bill 177, dealing with election integrity. However, it was never heard in the Senate. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. That is one of the reasons I am running as well, because this was a really important bill to not only my constituents, but to the state of Nevada. When we are seating disqualified candidates by district court judges, and this is perpetuating. We've had several cases now. Andrew Martin in 2012 was disqualified by a district court judge, and then he was seated after he was disqualified. This could have happened with my opponent had I not won the election right out. So this was a very important bill to me, to make sure that we kept honesty and integrity in the electoral process. The bill was heard in the Senate. It also came out of committee, but they did not bring it up on the floor for a vote. That bill was held until the last day of session, and they decided to not bring it up for a vote.
They, but being the Senate Majority Leader, decided not to go forward with it because
correct.
You also didn't agree to vote for the minimum wage hike.
That's correct.
Yes.
That's correct.
So he held it hostage.
Victoria, if you in your Senate campaign, I was looking at the district, and it seems like Democrats hold a 5 percentage point advantage in registered voters over Republicans in that district. And I was just wondering, what's your strategy to overcome that registration disadvantage?
Well, I overcame a 12.8 in Assembly District 34, and I believe that's because I'm very involved with the constituents. You know, at the end of the day, it's not about party. It's about serving the community and being a public servant, and that's exactly what I did. I had a lot of Democrats that walked for me. I had a big nonpartisan supporting, base that supported me, and I believe that's because I really care about the community. I'm out there. I do coffee with constituents. I'm involved with the community, and I hear their issues. One of the bills that I brought up was the squatter bill. I was a primary sponsor on the squatter bill because that was a huge issue in my district. That wasn't a Republican issue or a Democrat. It was everybody's issue.
Can you explain that?
The squatter bill?
Yes, please.
Well, before we brought this bill forth and it was passed and signed by the governor, and it had a lot of support bipartisanly. Actually, that bill was primary sponsored by Edgar Flores, Keith Dooling, and I. So it was a bipartisan bill. And that bill now gives Metro the authority to investigate squatting. Whereas before, if somebody had entered a house and was living in it and had a fake lease or no lease, Metro really their hands were tied to do anything, it became a civil issue. Even though we know those people broke into those empty houses or they were defrauded by other people who had frauded them, but Metro had no authority to even investigate. And now we have brought a bill forth, and again signed by the governor, that gives Metro the authority to investigate, and we've made tougher penalties for those who continue to squat. So it's a fabulous bill, and this was one of the biggest issues in my district. And this, like I said, it wasn't about Republicans or nonpartisan, it was about the community. A lot of crime.
Let me ask you about this. You know, on your website, you show that you're supported by Hispanics in politics. And a lot of people in the Republican side are concerned that, especially with the presidential race, that there's a lot of toughness against Hispanics. How do you think this is going to play out in Nevada as far as the Hispanic community, which is getting to be a larger and larger force in politics?
Well, are you talking on a presidential level? We've got...
Well, there's carryover, so
yeah,
I mean...
We've got you know, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz. We've got Hispanics running, you know, in the presidential across the board. And when I was asked, what are the needs of your Hispanics? I've got 23% Hispanics in my district. What are their needs? They're the same as everyone else's. So to separate this, it doesn't make sense to me, because every door that I knocked on a Hispanic door of a Hispanic voter, their concerns were the same as anyone else: jobs, education, and health care. So, you know, when you talk of these issues, the messaging to me is something that the Democrats do very well in getting into the immigration part. But as far as voters and citizen Hispanics, their needs are exactly the same as everyone else's.
Let me ask you about the response to the passing of the commerce tax. What are you hearing from your constituents regarding this? Do you think they're fully aware of the ramifications of this?
I do. We've actually polled my district, and people are very upset at Republicans across the board. Some of them are not educated yet as to who voted for it and who didn't, but Republicans are outraged at the commerce tax. They believe that 63 legislators went up to the legislature and voted for something that the constituents of the state of Nevada by 4-1 voted against. So they are not happy. I've also had a lot of calls and emails and texts from businesses. Their concerns are the unforeseen consequences of job losses, some businesses moving out of state. They're not happy. If you're making $3.5 million gross, what is your incentive to go to $4 million when you know you're going to be hit with a huge tax hike? There's no incentive there. And the concern of the business owners in my community are, every legislative session, we can bring down that ceiling and we can increase those percentages. This is a concern.
And that's where we have to leave it. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
We'll be right back on Nevada Newsmakers after this timeout.
Nevada Newsmakers is brought to you in part by the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, Pro Group Management, and the Retail Association of Nevada.